First section that we talked about, section 12.1, was our basic statistics, your measures of center, okay, your mean, median, mode. We talked about those things. Then we also had the measure of variance, which was called our range. Okay, it was something that a lot of you had done that before. You had done mean, median, mode, range, those type of things before, so it was kind of a refresher. We worked on that yesterday. Okay, now today we still have number 6, I think it was, or 7. We had one that we didn't finish yesterday. That's fine. We'll get back to it. If we don't get it today, we'll do it tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to be reviewing these 2 sections. So we can do it tomorrow as part of our review if we don't get it today. But today what we're going to start talking about is what they call standard deviation. And you'll notice up here on the board, I have a bunch of stuff right here in green. You need to know what all these things mean, because this is what we're using today. These are our formulas. Okay, so it's the stuff from the reading. It's just I summarized it, okay? Because we have 3 different formulas that we're going to be using, but they all use the same basic variables. So that's what I've got up here, okay? Our X is a data value. So 709 over here is a data value. 827 is a data value. 691, it's just the items that are in your list of data, okay? The X with the line above it. The X with the line above it is the mean of the data values. Now, we talked about mean yesterday. If you remember, when we're talking about mean, another word for that is the average. We added them all up and divided by how many there were. We found the average. So when you see the little X with the bar above it, it's talking about the mean of the data values, your average. Okay. When we're talking about N in the formulas is the number of data values. Okay. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 data values in number 1. So our N for number 1 will be 7. Okay. And then we have our 3 different things we're going to be finding, which are these right here. Our MD is our mean deviation, which basically is kind of the averages of how far everything is from the average. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Then we have our S squared, which is our variance. And we'll talk a little bit about more what that means. Or when you have just the single S by itself, that's our standard deviation, which that's our focal point to get to. But you kind of have to use the mean deviation and the variance to get to the standard deviation. Okay, so if you want any kind of notes or anything to have for this, these are things that I would write down. Now, we've got 3 formulas that we're going to be using today. Okay, we've got 3 formulas that we're going to be using today. And they're in your book too. So if you have a hard time seeing the board, they're in your book. The MD, or mean deviation, is the sum of this right here over the number of data values. Now think about what this means. We said X was our data value, and X with the bar over it was our mean of the data values. So basically what we're doing is we're seeing the difference between each data value and the mean, the average. So you're finding the difference between the original number and the mean. And then this right here, remember we used this when we did our series? It's sum. That means you add them all together. Okay, so that's the first formula. The second formula is our variance formula, and it looks very similar to this one. You'll notice though that instead of just having the X minus the mean, they had to square that value, and then, well, there you go. Instead of having X minus the mean, they had to square that value, and then they had to subtract 1 from the N on the bottom. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I just want to get you you have the formulas where you have them. And then the last one is our standard deviation, which this is our goal, which if you look real closely, the stuff that's underneath the square root sign is your variance. Remember, your variance was s squared. So to find the standard deviation, the s, I just take the square root of the variance. Okay, so yeah, these look kind of complicated with these formulas and stuff. They're not that they're that difficult to do. It's just they're time consuming. They're kind of tedious. Okay, because you got to do all this subtraction and stuff and everything. So the easiest way to actually organize your work and do it is like what I have set up here, a table. Okay, and so the three main columns that I need, I have one table that is just my x values, my data values that were given to me in the problem. Then my next column is the x minus the mean. And then my next column is going to be x minus the mean squared. I'm going to square the answer from this one for the next one. So it makes it a lot easier if you actually do all that work in a table, and then it's a lot easier to go back and add up what you need to add when you're plugging it into the formula. Okay, so looks complicated, it's just time consuming, not complicated. Okay, so our mean deviation is just the average difference between each value in the data set and the mean. Remember, you're taking the value minus the mean, and then we're adding them all up, and we're dividing by how many there are, so it's finding the averages of the average, kind of. So then we have variance, which it talks about variance on page 560, and again, that's where it's got these formulas in the book in little boxes if you need them, if you can't see up here. It says statisticians have improved on the mean deviation by making 2 adjustments to the mean deviation calculation. Squaring the differences, I said they added the squared on there, and then subtracting 1 from the number of data values. Okay, so this is called our simple variance. Okay, since we square stuff, then that gets rid of negative signs, because a negative times a negative makes it positive. So that's why we like the variance a little bit better. Okay. And then the last one is the standard deviation, which it talks about it on the bottom page 561, because finding the variance produces squared units, presenting the standard deviation as usually preferred. So that's what we're going for. And basically you just take the square root of the variance to get your standard deviation. So now in your book, if you'll look at the examples, you'll notice most of their tables, they did going across. I don't know, for some reason to me, I rather have them in columns. I don't know, I guess that's the way Miss Sutherland taught me years and years ago. I've just always done them in columns. They do them in rows. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so whichever way you prefer, I just like them in columns better. Okay, so that's what we're gonna work on there. So everybody kind of got their notes down that they need? Is everybody still awake?
Yes, ma'am.
We're good? Okay. All right, I'm gonna scoot you back just a little bit. All right, so you can see my table. All right, so for number 1 on my table, I already took my data values. It said a certain company's computer analyst noted the following number of people who visited their website for a week. So these are the number of people that came each week to their website. So you had 951 the first week, 668, 1082. Okay, so you've got them down through there. Okay. Now, this is for a week. So this is actually the number of days in the week, because remember I already said M was 7. Then it says we are supposed to find our mean deviation, the variance, and the standard deviation. Before we try to do anything with those formulas, I fill my table in. Okay, now If you hadn't already figured it out, is this something that you're going to definitely want a calculator for?
Yes.
Yes, you are, because you're going to end up, you got some big old numbers here, and we're going to be adding them up, so you're going to get even bigger numbers. So you definitely want a calculator, okay? I'll grab mine. Make sure it's turned on, that's helpful. And we're ready to go. So what I'm going to do first is it gives me my x's, and then in my next column, I say I take each x value and subtract the mean. But do I know the mean yet? I don't know my mean yet. I have to find my mean. So to find my mean, that's the x with the bar over it. To find that mean, I have to add these numbers together and divide by how many there are. That's like what we talked about yesterday. We already said there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers. So we're adding those numbers together. 951 plus 8. And you get a sum. And then I'm going to divide that sum by 7. So when I worked it out and I got my mean, I got 838. Somebody double check me to make sure that I did that correctly, because it's real easy when you're typing in a bunch of big numbers in the calculator to hit the wrong key. Okay? But we have to, is that right?
Yeah.
But we have to find our mean first, because we have to take each one of the x values and subtract that mean, because that's what answer goes in this column. So I'm taking 951 minus 838, and I'm getting the answer. I'm taking 668 minus 838. You're taking each one of your data values and you're going to subtract that mean from it. Now notice, it doesn't matter if it's bigger or smaller than the mean. The x value always goes first, the mean value goes second. Okay, so you can get negative numbers on here. Okay, we're trying to find how far each data value is from our mean, from our average. So you're going to take each one of those and subtract it from the 838. Now I'm writing it in my little square just so you all know what I'm doing to get this answer. Okay, if you don't want to write it in your little square, you don't have to. You just know that you're taking this number minus 838 and every single one. So 9. Sorry, my marker's spooky. As you're getting them, kind of check your answers with what I had and see if we're both on the same path. I got what the book has, so if you get what I got, then you're good. Well, hopefully. because I have found things in the book that weren't right. So
I just lost my pencil.
I'm sorry.
I don't know where it is. Oh, I got it. Right now.
Now, after we finish that column, we use those answers to find our next column. Because if you notice, the heading for our last column, let's scoot up just a little bit. The heading for our last column is just whatever we had here.
Square.
Okay, so that means you're going to take 113 and square it. So you get big old numbers on this. This is why I said you want a calculator. Okay, because you're taking 113 times 113 basically. So you get 12,769. Now you have to be careful on here because when you're squaring a negative, remember your answer is still going to be what?
Positive.
Positive. So you don't even have to put the negative in the calculator for your squaring it because you know it's going to be positive. If you do put the negative in, you've got to put parentheses around it so it'll square the negative as well. So I just don't even bother putting it in because I know it's going to be a positive answer. Whoops, I hit third instead of squared, so that could have messed me up. Well, I don't need to put that in there. Whoops. Whoa. Now remember what I said. These problems, it's not that they're real difficult. The issue is that they're time consuming. Because this is a lot of work and we're still not even done with the first problem. We haven't even finished one yet. Okay? They're long, aren't they? They're really shaking her head. No. Okay, we're not even done yet. Okay? So now when we get to this point, we're ready to start doing our part A, B, and C that it actually asked us for. Our mean deviation, our variance is the part B answer, and our standard deviation is the part C answer. So now we're ready to do a little bit more work. Okay, so for part A, you're doing the mean deviation. The mean deviation says we take the sum of the x minus the mean. So you're going to take the sum of this column. So sum means I do what with them?
Add.
Together. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to add all these numbers together. Now you have to be careful and make sure you put negatives on the ones that are negatives when you're adding them together. We're going to have to add all those numbers together, and then we're going to divide it by the number of data values, which was 7. So our mean deviation is equal to the big sum divided by 7. So we got to add all those together. Okay, so 113, whoops, 113 plus. Like I said, be careful, make sure you put your negative signs in. That's the most common mistake, is people forget the negatives. Are you serious? Is that what that really is? It's about time for her to show up. All right, what are you all getting when you add them up?
For some reason I got 0, but I don't know.
Me too, and I'm not understanding.
I think I like missed one of them or something.
I got negative 500.
Wow.
I got 0.
I got 0, but I'm looking at the numbers. We have the exact same numbers they did.
Oh, let me do it again.
I got 0 too.
Yeah, I did too, but they're trying to say it's like 900 and something. Well, that ain't happening unless they, oh, I know what we did. Shame on us. Shame. I know what I did. It's my fault.
I'm still getting negative 500 for some reason.
It is my fault. All right. Well, we're both wrong, the zeros and the negative 500s. And it's my fault because right here, okay, I'm going to roll y'all over up close and personal. Right here, this isn't supposed to be parentheses. This is supposed to be this. What do those bars mean?
Absolute value.
Absolute value. So what they're saying is when you add all those together, you ignore the negatives. Because it's the absolute value. So that's my fault. I wrote down the formula wrong. See, I told y'all I'm going blind. Looking at these little answer key books. All right, so let's try it again. Ignore the negatives and see what we get. 113 plus 170 plus 244 plus 129 plus 11 plus 157 plus 110. Now I get the answer they said. Now I got what they said. I got 934. Are y'all getting that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And we divide that by 7, and we get a big long decimal. Okay, we're going to keep 3 places behind the decimal like we've been used to in our probability stuff. That seems to be like a good habit. So we'll have 133.429 because the 5 is going to make the 8 go up. Because this is what it looks like on the calculator. And the 5 is going to make the 8 go up, so it's 429 on the end. Okay, so that's just part A. This is hard work. Okay, part B. Part B is our variance. So our variance is equal to the sum of my squared column divided by the number of terms minus 1. So I'm going to have 7 minus 1 on the bottom, but then I got to add all of this column together here. So make sure you got your table. We got to add all those big numbers together this time. And they were all positive to begin with. So 12,769. Y'all getting an answer? Added them all up. I got 154,716 as my sum.
Yeah, that's what I got.
I have to divide that by 7 minus 1. Well, 7 minus 1 is just 6. So I have 154,716 divided by 6. And it comes out to a nice number, no decimal. So that's equal to 25786. Okay, so that is what they call the variance, 25,786. Now we still have to do part C. We're still not done yet. Part C says you take the square root of your variance answer. So I don't have to plug all that mess into here again because I already know what it's equal to. So for my S, my part C, I just have S is equal to the square root of 25,786. So I'm going to take the square root of that. So square root of my answer. You get a big long decimal again. Remember, we're keeping how many decimal places?
3.
3. So we have 160.580 is my standard deviation. See, so it's like almost 1:30 and we've only finished one problem. Told you, these are hard work. Right? All right.
Yeah.
It's not that they're really that difficult as long as you have a calculator, but they take a long time. Okay? So, number 4 is a little bit easier because it's smaller numbers. So we're going to try that one next. Okay? We're going to start though by filling out our table again. So everybody's got your mean deviation, your variance, and your standard deviation down for number 1?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So let's go over here and work at this table. Okay? Now, like I said, this one will be a little bit better because we don't have near as big numbers. Okay? Now remember, we start off with our x values given to us, and then we have to fill in this column, which is our difference between our x value and our mean. So before we can do this column, we have to find our mean. So to find our mean, you have to add these together and divide by how many there are. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 data values in this one. Because on number 2, it said, oh, no, not number 2. On number 4, it says, Bradley tracked the number of visitors to his church on Sunday mornings for 2 months. So there were 8 Sundays in the 2 months, so this is how many visitors they had each week. Okay, so that's what we're trying to analyze here. So we're going to start off by adding these up and dividing by 8. Okay, so 4 plus 9.
I got 7.25.
Because you have 58 divided by 8. Yep. Okay, so this is our mean, our average. Now remember what we do for this column is we take each one of the data values and you subtract the mean from it. So a lot of these you will get a negative number, okay? So you'll have 4 minus 7.25. And so you'll get negative 3.25. Okay, so some will be negative if they were less than the mean. They'll be negative if they were more than the mean, then they should be positive. So all you're doing is you're taking your number and subtracting the mean. Oh, that's not good. Oh. So do those numbers look like what you all are getting? For number 4. And I'll go see if I did them right for what the book says. Anything but you have them. Yep. All right. Now, for the next column, remember, all you do is you take this answer and you square it. And remember, if it's a negative, it's going to become positive anyway, so you don't even need to bother putting the negative in the problem. So we're going to take 3.25 squared. Now on these, keep all the decimal places because it's coming up even, okay? Whoops, keep the decimal places. Don't round these off. Okay, so you got a lot of big numbers there, a lot of long decimals. Okay, but after we have our columns, then we're ready to actually start finding our mean deviation, our variance, and our standard deviation. Mean deviation, remember you take the sum of this column, but remember we learned on the last one, I'd written the formula down wrong. It's supposed to be absolute value, so do you use the negatives?
No.
Don't use the negatives. Okay, because absolute value of a negative is a positive. So all of them are positives. So when you go to do this, you just add all these up, that goes on top, and you divide it by the 8 on the bottom. Okay, so that's going to be our mean deviation.
I got 24.5.
So did I. Okay, so now we divide that by 8, and you get 3.0625. Now, since this was a nice decimal that ended, I'm not going to worry about rounding it off. I'm just going to leave it. Okay, those others were big long decimals that kept going, so we needed to round them. This, we'll just leave it. Okay, now for part B, we're doing our variance. Our variance is the sum of this column. Okay, when we took the squared, it's the sum of this column divided by n minus 1. So instead of having 8 on the bottom, I'll have 8 minus 1, which is 7 that I'll be dividing by. So now we add this column all together. Whoa, no. And somebody check me because that's a lot of big numbers to, I think that's what, okay. Did y'all get 103.5 when you add those up?
Mm,
That's a lot to add, type in a calculator because they're long numbers. That's what I said. It's not that they're difficult as much as they're just tedious, long. Of course, that's why they don't
I
have.
just messed up. I just messed up.
You should get, when you add these together, 103.5. But remember, this time, instead of dividing it by 8, we're dividing it by 7. Now, when you're dividing by 7, 7's going to give you one of those big, long, repeating decimals. So on this part, we're going to need to round it, okay? On this part, we're going to need to round it. So I'm going to round it to 14.78, and then I have 5 and then a 7 again, so 7's going to make that 5 go up to a 6. Now, for part C, we don't have to plug anything into the formula really, because our standard deviation is just the square root of our variance answer. So I take the square root of 14.786. So square root of 14.786. Again, I get a big old long decimal. So it's going to be 3.845. Okay, so this is our standard deviations. But we have to be able to find that, we do our mean deviation, we do our variance, and then we do standard deviation, okay? You have to find the variance. It's easier to find the variance first, and then just take the square root for your standard deviation. Now, please, 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 I'm gonna back up a little bit. You can see all of 4 if you didn't get it all down yet. Please, please, please make sure you had all of number 1 and all of number 4 down, okay? Now, there's still a couple of other teal on there, okay? Now, I'm not worried about number 2 right now. Number 2, you think these are bad? Look at the numbers they give you on number 2. You see your X values in number 2?
Yeah,
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
we're not doing number 2. We're not going to do that one. No. So, on number 5, we are going to do number 5. Number 5 is nice normal numbers. Okay? Number 5 doesn't even have that many numbers. So, what I want you to do is I want you to just work on trying to get your table done for number 5. Okay? If you want to go ahead and try to do this part, you can, but I want you to focus on just trying to get your table fixed for number 5. Because number 5 says, Veronica conducted a poll to find the number of pairs of shoes some of her friends owned and found the following results. Didn't we have something about pairs of shoes the other day, or was that Algebra 1?
Yeah, I think so.
I know one of the
I think
questions
so.
is about how many people, pairs of shoes for the women in church or something. All right, so on this one, you only have 6 numbers, so it's even smaller. Okay, so you're going to set up your table. You're going to have your X values. You have to find the mean, the average of the X values, subtract to get this column, and then square the answers in this column to get that one. So I would like for you to at least try to start and get your table set up for number 5. Tomorrow, we're going to be reviewing these 2 sections. Okay, so we're not learning anything new tomorrow. We're still working on what we did in 12.1 and 12.2. Okay, because this is a lot of stuff, okay? And I don't want you all to go, wah! So we're going to review tomorrow on these, but we still have, I think, number 6 or 7. I don't remember what number it was that we didn't do from yesterday. So we'll start by finishing and going over our table that you all tried to do for number 5, doing this, and then we'll go back and do that last problem from yesterday's, and then we'll do a couple of more problems, just reviewing 12.1 and 12.2, to get you to the point where you can take quizzes for 12.1 and 12.2. Okay? So everybody knows what I want you to try to do?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? We're good. We're going to do what? Try to fix our table for number 5. All right? And then I'll see you all tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Okay?
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.